Hey there, fans of the Survivor Super Fun Time Show. This is Kevin from the Super Fun Time Show, and today we got an awesome recap episode for you for Survivor 46, Episode 9. Episode 9. This was a big one. I mean, this season, like ever since episode 5 or so, it has gotten super, super messy and super, super strategic as a Survivor season goes. And it's funny, you know, like the deeper we get and kind of the more angry the cast gets, I think about the words that Jeff Probst said a long time ago. And like right as season 46 was starting, he said, "We will not be casting villains intentionally. We'll not be going out of our way to fill that archetype," because so many fans of the new era of Survivor, which is 41 and up, they've said, we're missing villains. We don't have a Russell Hantz that we could say, that guy is a jackass. And I am excited to see him on screen every week and to hopefully get his face punched in. We haven't had that. But the good news is, Survivor 46 has actually presented like 2 of those so far, maybe 3. And we're going to talk about some of that moving forward. But first, before we really get into all that, remember, be a subscriber to the Survivor Super Fun Time Show. It is really, really helpful for the success of this channel. So if you watch any of my videos, you have any kind of love for the content that gets put out here, please hit the subscribe button. I would appreciate it greatly. All right, but we're going to get into the episode here. The biggest thing right off the bat, you know, everyone's coming back from episode 8's Tribal Council. This is where Q blew everything up, tried to take the fall and go home himself, but the rest of the tribe wouldn't let him do it. Tiffany is pissed off because Q blew her game up in a few different ways. By telling everyone about the idol and also by trying to switch things around to the point where like Tiffany was going to be voted out earlier in the episode. A lot of reasons for Tiffany to be pissed, and she confronts Q about it. Kenzie's obviously mad as well because the Yanu 3 had a good thing going on. Liz Wilcox, who I am wearing the glasses of in honor of big Liz Wilcox today, she's rightfully upset too because remember, this woman has not eaten the majority of the game. They've repeatedly told us that over and over again. She has not eaten. You have the mental stress of playing this game anyway, and then you have a guy like Q blowing it up to the point where she just got rid of Tevin, and she had also pretty much gotten rid of Soda all under the guise of Tevin. And no one's going to give her credit for it because all they're going to remember from that tribal is Tevin getting voted out because Q caused a lot of nonsense. So it's been the Q show. Pay attention to Q. Look at me, Q, basically. So Liz rightly is upset and frustrated after this vote because of that. I think the other one who's truly really happy about it was probably Venus, because Venus loves the chaos, loves the messiness, and she's done, you know, pretty well in that chaos. The vast majority of the beginning of the episode is, we hate Q. Let's not talk to Q. Let's not work with Q. And one of those people that's really staunch about it is actually Ben. I didn't see that coming because Ben's like the lighthearted shredder and everything, but he just did not care for those shenanigans at all. And it really showed throughout the episode. When really the people that are like sitting pretty among this whole thing are Venus, who I would drag to the end kicking and screaming at this point because she isn't a viable threat for a lot of different things now at this point. I don't think she'll get votes at the end. However, she's a good ally to have. She really is involved and in the mix for a lot of different things. And objectively, as a viewer of the show, really entertaining. I don't want her going anywhere for a long time, and I don't think she will. I think she's going to be around for a super, super long time. And also Charlie and Maria, the most stable twosome left in the game at this point. They're doing the classic, like, legit Malcolm and Denise from Survivor Philippines. Like Charlie had mentioned very early on in Survivor 46, they are living that dream out. No questions now at this point. Meanwhile, Hunter's trying to just pick up the pieces, and him and Q were kind of on the outs. Because in the previous tribal, Hunter's closest ally is Tevin. He didn't want to vote against Tevin, so he voted against Venus. And Venus was upset about that, and they had a little bit of a fight. For some reason, there's been a big like stand war on Twitter and Reddit and stuff of people who love Hunter versus people who love Venus. And it's wild because as characters, at least, I like both. I think Venus is a much bigger character than Hunter, but Hunter's just objectively like a good dude who's good at a lot of things on Survivor. But it's very interesting how they've also clashed, because based on Hunter's exit interviews from this episode, he talked about how Venus didn't really like him very much from the beginning. And, you know, that Venus, I think, thought that he didn't like her because strategically Nami didn't lose, so he didn't want to throw out any names until he had to. And Venus took that as her being stonewalled personally by Hunter. And I think it just caused a lot of confusion. And it came to a head this episode when Venus is talking to Q and Hunter, and she feels she's got the upper hand and really, really dives into it. Really dives into, you know, I'm up here, you all are kind of down here. And I mean, there's some truth to that this episode, because Venus is not someone anyone's looking at. And she has a little bit of a moment to really kind of lay into them. And that was kind of important for them to hear anyway, because that's the truth, and they need to figure out a way to dig out of it. So since the episode was really a lot about just yelling at Q and Hunter getting yelled at a little bit, we're going to jump right to the immunity challenge. The immunity challenge is where you get split up into 3 tribes of 3, essentially, just like last season and the seasons before. This was interesting because nobody wanted to be on a team with Q, so everyone kind of strategically split up in a way that kept them away. Those that had a little more sway, like Tiffany and Kenzie, decided to just quickly say, like, hey, I think we're going to shred with Ben. It's just to make sure that the Yanu 3 is not put together because they have nothing to do with Q. Hunter said, I'll stick with Charlie and Maria, and obviously no one's going to turn that down because Hunter wins all the time. And then the 3, I guess you would call outcasts, Liz, Venus, and Q, got put together on a team. And it's funny because even Probst was like, yeah, this team's not going to win. And that was like part 1 of the 2 things that I thought Probst is like overstepping his bounds on as a host. Personally, when you start up and he's like, yeah, this tribe's gonna suck, I was like, okay. I mean, I got it at the Mergatory when they were split up and like all the dudes were on one tribe and all the ladies were on the other tribe. I understand how you could take a leap and say, physically looking at the 2 tribes, it seems that they could be a little imbalanced. Whereas this episode, Probst was just like, yup, I would say I would not bet on that tribe compared to the other 2. And I disagreed. I don't see any reason why Liz, Venus, and Q couldn't compete with the other 2. I didn't think it was that imbalanced. And once you know it, Ben, Kenzie, and Tiffany are the first ones out. That means Liz, Q, and Venus actually got to move forward a little bit. However, they did not win the second heat, and it came down to Hunter, Charlie, and Maria. No surprise, where they got to compete against each other for immunity. This is the one where they're basically like, not on a cross, but they're, holding like this, and you have to hold on to it as long as you can. And Maria was the first one out, and then it came down to a battle of Charlie and Hunter. Charlie doing great in challenges, and he has since the beginning. I didn't expect him to do as well as he has, but he's actually a D1 track athlete, as he has told me on Twitter one of these days. He's killing it. He's killing it in every way possible in the game at this point. And no surprise, he actually ended up beating Hunter, which was really fun to see. I wonder if like Hunter gave up a little bit because he knew he hadn't hit an immunity idol and he didn't need it as bad. I don't know, but it is pretty depressing when you're sitting there, and you're the only one people don't want to win, and you know it. That kind of sucks, right? But he loses, Charlie kills it, Charlie wins, and they go back, and that's where the plotting really starts to begin. Q is trying to convince Kenzie that, yeah, she's got an alliance going on that she didn't tell you about. And Kenzie's like, listen, I know about the alliance, okay? But beside the point, you didn't tell me about the alliance either, so I don't want to hear from you. And I loved it because it was like just the right amount of being bratty and also at the same time being like confidently socially strategic at the same time. Like if you piss off Q right now, who cares? Q is on the bottom of everyone's list. It doesn't even matter. But beside the point, Kenzie was justifiably mad in that instant. So I loved how she handled that situation. And I think that's like a great, appropriate way to handle someone like Q who's coming by to totally gaslight. Because Q, his game's all over the place. It's no good. He's doing crazy stuff, honestly. And it's funny is, I think it's coming from a good place. I think he's right. He was just trying to fall on his sword because he feels bad. But the problem is, him trying to fall on his own sword is ruining the investments of his allies. So regardless, they can be pissed off at him. And this is the moment where I was like, Kenzie, yes, girl. This girl is so good at Survivor. She is made to play every one of these games. She can win them all. And not 30 seconds later did Kenzie, my absolute favorite in this game, did she go up to everyone else and say, hey, so how do you feel about Tiffany's idol? Maybe we should go after Tiffany this time. And I was just like, no, don't do it. Because only like a few seconds before that, I was making up a little song in my head. I was going, hey, Kenzie, ooh, ha. I wanna know, would you be my girl? And then she goes off and says, let's vote out Tiffany, who's my second favorite. And I was not okay in that moment watching the episode. And like Maria had talked about voting out Tiffany a little bit earlier on, but I expected that from Maria. Maria is very sharp and she's in the shadows. And she doesn't really benefit from Tiffany sticking around. Whereas I thought Kenzie did. But this season, Survivor 46, is the season of voting out your tightest allies. I don't know why. And I get the validity of it to some degree, but like, get to the final 6 at least or something before you do that. But Kenzie, I don't know, she was on something that day and was like, no. But thankfully, Tiffany kind of went around and told everyone she was going to play her idol no matter what, even without knowing Kenzie was trying to drum up votes. So that kind of deterred everyone from voting out Tiffany. And Maria also didn't want to do it and think Kenzie was going to get the credit. She was also going to get the blame, but it's all a matter of perspective at that point. Then Hunter tells everyone he has a surprise hidden immunity idol. Well, at least he tells Liz, and he also tells Venus, and that's a surprise because they probably were going to vote for Hunter. But once that got released, things changed a little bit. I think some of the votes were going on Q. At that point, at least, we know Kenzie's was for sure, and it just made everything more complicated. They get to tribal. They have their discussions, like basic stuff. And I will say, Jeff, part 2, the cringiest stuff of New Era. This is why when I say, like, listen, I love Jeff Probst. I love the man for keeping this show alive. I love, even when I don't like the twists that he puts in, I love that he's continuing to be innovative because Survivor has to evolve. It must evolve in order to continue to be a good product. But one of the things I don't like is his New Era hosting style. I always call him rock and roll Probst, where I think he wants to be cool and like the cool dad kind of thing. And he starts off Tribal Council saying, I brought a cushion this time for the crazy tribal, and I brought some popcorn because I love memes, like, you know, and then he gave everyone popcorn and stuff. That cringe takes us to the next point where we get into fights, which was really fun. Tiffany and Q get into a big old argument at Tribal Council. Loved it. It was great. Everyone, it was so fun watching people enjoy it. Venus watching her reactions was really fun. Ben even got a little He got a piece of Q during that whole interaction. And that was something I didn't expect. I think Ben's been edited as a very emotional and positive player, but in this moment, the previous episode, when he said he didn't care about the shenanigans that Q was putting on, that was 100% authentic because he did not care for those shenanigans. He was letting Q have it. Now, with the threat of Tiffany and Hunter going to play their idols, the votes are red. Nobody plays their idol. Hunter and Tiffany do not do it. We get a tie vote, folks. We get half for Hunter, half for Q, and one stray vote for Ben. And that stray vote was Q's, which is really kind of funny. That kind of lets you know that probably Q wasn't as involved in the votes as maybe he thought. I know Hunter told Q before the vote, hey, we should really put them on Ben. The problem is no one else was doing it. So that tells you where Q is in the game, no matter what the edit is. They have to do a revote. Hunter gets the majority of the votes, voted out of the game with an idol in his pocket. Gem all over again, sadly. No one has actually used an idol correctly during this season. Now, what blows my mind about Hunter not playing his idol at Tribal Council is, apparently during his exit interviews, he talked about how the votes were going to break down. According to him, he knew it was basically going to be a split. But he was only counting on Tiffany to vote for Q instead of himself. And that's not what happened, and that's what caused the tie. So he was having faith in Tiffany being the one to go to his side in order to prevent being voted out. He knew he had a 1-vote margin, and he still didn't play the idol. Like, if I'm him, I would, like, I'm Hunter. Like, I'm a challenge beast. Why not play the idol this time, bet on yourself to win immunity next time, and or find the idol when it's replanted because you're the most nature-savvy person out of the entire group? I don't understand why I didn't take that gamble. It was a tough one to see Hunter go. He was one I liked a lot. I knew he didn't have long-term potential. After the last episode or two, it was over. The Nami destruction is going to be studied for sure. Like, I'm just thinking Bello when I look at Nami. Because Bello went into Survivor 45, into the merge, and they had 5 of their 6 originals. They just could not work together. And Nami probably thought they could work together, but instead, they decided to target their own. Liz wanted Soda out, Tevin wanted Soda out. Nami cannot work together. Now, the only 2 that are left on Nami, Venus and Big Liz Wilcox. Like, it's kind of amazing. I'm not surprised by Liz. I'm a little surprised by Venus, but you know, that's where, like, you think about the different phases of the game and how important they are. Nami's biggest problem is they didn't go to Tribal Council and pre-merge, so, like, they didn't have the opportunity to sort out family business. That's what I call it, at least. If you go pre-merge, you know where everyone is. You have a history to work off of, and you know who's really with you and who's not. Whereas, like, Siga, they at least got the 1 vote under their belt. They understood Maria, Charlie, and Ben. They're going to be riding together. And the Yanu 3, they went through war together. Those 3 were sticking together no matter what. and it made it so easy, it made him look inconsequential. I mean, just the value of going to Tribal Council and pre-merge is so huge, I think, truly. I am super excited to see where this goes from here. There are players that I think have long-term winning potential, have middle-of-the-road potential, and have no shot to win the game. And if I just had to do a quick recap of who I think has no shot to win the game, Venus and Q are the tier that I would say cannot win the game at this point. The middle tier that is kind of like maybe could possibly win the game, Ben, I think he's closer to the not win, but at one point I thought he was very close. Now I think probably not. He's in that tier. The next tier up is probably Charlie and Maria. They're setting themselves up to be really, really good. Although I'm going to put Charlie above Maria. Charlie is killing it all around. No matter what realm, he's killing it. So I think he's going to do really, really well moving forward. I think Liz is going to at least make final tribal, but she's probably in the second tier. The top tier, who I think definitely will win the game or one of these, really it comes down to Tiffany and Kenzie. Those are the big ones for me. I don't see a scenario where it isn't Tiffany, Kenzie, or maybe Charlie. Those are the only three that I see at this point that can actually win the game. But that's what I think. Let me know down below in the comment section what you think about this episode, who you think has long-term potential, who you think is likely to get voted out next. Let me know, and I'd love to hear about it. Also, big surprise, Jeff Probst officially announced last night that Survivor 50, 50, is going to be an all-returner season.
Okay, well, about 10 seconds ago, we just decided, thanks to all the fans that were in attendance at the FYC event here in Hollywood, that Survivor 50 will be returning players, and you all are a part of it. All right.
Absolutely huge. I'm very proud of Papa Probst for finally pulling the trigger on a returner season. I mean, I think even though I've been kind of clamoring for one for a while, this was the right time to unleash it. Making us eat our vegetables with purely new players for 9 seasons up to that point is appropriate. Because, you know, I was a fan since the beginning pretty much. Well, season 2. Back to the Australian Outback. And when All-Stars hit, when Survivor All-Stars happened in season 8, it was such a big deal. It was a huge deal. And then we eventually got spoiled because then we had Fans vs. Favorites only 6 seasons after that. And then we had Heroes vs. Villains only 4 after that. So we got used to it. So I'm glad that Probst can hit the reset button with returnees, and I'm very thankful. And it's going to be really good. We're going to definitely do videos about ideal casts, ideal themes, players who we think could win, players who we think will come back and probably can't win the game. We'll definitely talk about all those things. But that's going to do it. Hope you all have an amazing day, everyone. And take care. Remember, keep it super fun, everybody.